All right, so yogis will begin. If we haven't met, I'm Jennifer Elliott, and welcome to Yin. And again, today, what we're going to be using is one bolster, one blanket for nearly every pose. But most likely you don't have a bolster in the house. So grab a couple of blankets, a couch cushion, something from your bed, maybe a couple of blankets, blocks, whatever, and then we can makeshift as we go. So the way that we're going to start, I'm going to use this blanket for underneath my head. And I'm going to use the bolster for underneath my feet for butterfly. And I'm going to use a timer on my phone. This will just give us a nice bell sound so we know that we've been there for a while. So we're going to do 4 minutes for this first posture. And the way I'm going to set up is I'm actually going to put my feet on the bolster in butterfly. Now you could take your feet on the other side. You could do any version of a reclined butterfly you'd like, but I'm going to take my feet on top. And if you're new to me, I generally give lots of options for your poses. It's not really about specifics, it's more about target areas. And so for right now, we're targeting the thighs, we're moving into a reclined butterfly, but there's lots of ways to do this. So if you feel this too much in your knees or in your lower back, then you might want to take the props instead underneath your knees and put your feet on the ground. So just do this for you. And then let the eyes close. And take a few moments just to drop down into the body. And let the eyes soften, the jaw unhinge. And allow the breath just to find its own natural rhythm. A lot of our yin practice is learning to become the observer. We're not so involved in what's happening. We're more training that meditative mind. And so in this moment, scan the body, notice what's happening. You don't need to make changes unless it's physically uncomfortable. Just observe the quality, texture, duration of the breath. You don't have to change it. It'll change on its own. And notice the field of the mind. Those thought waves, the chitta vrittis. You can think of our thoughts almost like you're throwing stones in a pond, and each thought creates another ripple, another stone. The mind can feel very turbulent, very whirly. And so the more that we can find one single focus, the breath, a sensation, a moment, and the less thoughts we have, the less whirlings of the mind. And so maybe here you just visualize that you're looking in that pond and you've thrown a stone, you've had a thought, there's a ripple. But see if you can watch that stone go all the way to the ground, all the way to the bottom of the pond. And the more that you're watching that stone, we're not throwing another stone, there's not another thought, and so that water becomes still. You can see the stone at the bottom, you can see your reflection clearly. And that might prompt another thought, it might cast another stone, for lack of a better phrase. You start all over again. Find that stillness. Watch your reflection until it becomes still. Got about 5 more natural breaths here. Okay, so take your hands to your outer knees, guide them together. Just take a moment and allow your body to be receptive to those changes. And then whatever you had underneath your knees, for me it was that bolster. I'm going to move it to the left side. I'm just going to pull that bolster or 2 blankets or a couple of blocks over to the left side of the body. Left leg is going to straighten. I'm going to pull the right knee in. And then I'm just going to cross this leg over and rest it. Now, oftentimes I see people and they have just the knee on and the foot is falling off. So what's nice about a bolster or a couple long blankets is we want to try to get the knee, the shin, and the foot on the prop. So try to get as much of it as you can level. And then rotate your torso towards the ceiling. So peel left shoulder blade out. You can place your left hand on your top thigh. If you have a sandbag or another blanket that also fits nicely on top of the knee. And then I'll set our timer. We're going to do 3 minutes for our twist. Now again, it's any twist you want. So if this is not the twist that's feeling the best in your body or you don't have the props to make it successful, take any other version of a twist and that's fine. And then once you've found your pose, let's close the eyes again and just start to drop back down into the body. And this time we will direct the breath. So the breath will be moving in and out through the nose. And we'll let the breath create an even pattern, samavritti. So inhale will be equal to the exhale. So take an inhale through the nose for 4, 3, 2, 1. Pause at the top. Exhale out the nose, 4, 3, 2, 1. Pause at the top. Inhale for 4. Exhale for 4. Continue this on your own. Inhale and exhale. And as you continue this on your own, feel that it's as if you were riding the breath like a wave, and it's a very gentle wave. So like we're on that pond again, we're in a boat, it's very relaxing water. And you can feel that gentle rise and gentle fall, very soothing, rocking motion. About another minute here. And see if you can let go of something. Maybe releasing tension in the jaw. You can yawn or unhinge the jaw. Maybe even just release the grip of the hand. Or let the breath count fade away so it becomes more intuitive, that rise and fall. All right, so bring yourself back to center. Straighten the right leg out on the floor. Just take a moment to sort of receive those benefits. Feel the real change between sides. Now in a moment, we're going to move the prop over to the other side, but I'm actually going to change my body. It makes a little bit more sense in my space. And I know I'm going to use it later, so I'm just going to grab an extra prop here. So moving your bolster to your right side. And then straighten out the right leg. Pull the left knee into your chest. And then once you've got your prop on your right side, take the knee over, or you've decided on your own twist. And again, set it up. Sometimes I'll hear people say things like, oh, it's restorative because there's props. But in restorative poses, we don't feel anything. We want to be sort of in Shavasana. Just because there's props doesn't mean that we're not receiving the benefit. We're not sort of adding that gravity and time to our pose. So we'll add our 3 minutes. Again, if you choose a different twist, go with that. Part of the reason I like props is I have a lot of different things in my body that don't feel great where I don't have props. Maybe I want a blanket to support the knees, or a sandbag or something to add that extra weight, or even the bolster. To me, it really sets in that parasympathetic response when I feel the comfort of the bolster. I sort of drop in much more quickly to that idea of releasing and settling into the pose. So now that we're here, let's close the eyes. Do your last minute fidgeting to make this sort of what you want it. And then just commit to the stillness. Let the breath be the animator of your body. If you want to count the breath again, go for it, or you might have just gotten into a really nice rhythm of rise and fall of breath. Now, as we start to train our meditative mind, we want to train ourselves to be the observer. So whatever rises up for you, just notice and label it. So the first thing I noticed was a physical sensation being uncomfortable. So I adjusted, but I thought to myself, oh, that's physical. I sort of created a label. I might notice my mind wandering to planning my day. And so I just take a step back and I label it and say, oh, I'm planning. And then I move back to my breath. And I just continue to label my thoughts, label what I observe. And that label starts to create that separation. We're no longer involved. About another 5 or 6 even breaths here. Okay, so you're going to come back to center. And again, just straighten out the left leg, little mini shavasana, rebound. Give yourself a chance to sort of just seal in those benefits of the pose. And then bend your knees. You're going to roll to your side and press up. Now, if you have a bolster and a blanket, that's what we'll use. If not, I'll give you options with like maybe blocks. So I grabbed an additional blanket to put under my head. This could be a block. That could be anything you'd like. I'm going to have the bolster sideways underneath my chest. This could be a 2-block heart opener if you don't have a bolster. And then sometimes my low back feels a little tender. So I'm going to make this not as much of a back bend for me, which I recommend if you have a bolster. And I'm just going to put a blanket under my seat so this lifts it a little bit higher. So I have a blanket under my seat. I've got that bolster behind me. I'm going to shift in a way that this goes across the chest. My arm is sort of draping between the bolster and whatever's under my head. And I'm just creating a nice heart opening. My arms are in cactus. Now again, this could be a 2-block heart opener, which I'll demo really quickly if that's not something you know or do often. This is another option. You might have blocks but no bolster. You could start in something like this as well. So find something that's going to open up your chest in a way that supports you. And again, if you feel this in your lower back, have a little extra lift underneath your seat. Okay. just going to stick with our 3 minutes. Just to stay consistent. What I like about the 3 minutes is it's kind of a happy medium. Meaning if you're brand new to yin, you might really feel this becomes very challenging after only a minute. If you're a little bit more seasoned, you might feel like you want to stay closer to 5 minutes. And so 3 is a really good middle ground. And so if you ever do come out early, just enjoy a rest. And if you ever want to stay in longer, you can just sort of stay in while I explain the next pose. The legs are up to you. I'm bending my knees because that feels really nice on my lower back. Some of you I know like to target the inner thighs, again, going back to that butterfly or even straight legs. And just observe the rise and fall of the ribs as you breathe. But see if you can also encourage or at least investigate your breath breathing into the back ribs. We forget that the breath moves in all directions. So feel the side body expanding, feel the back body pressing into the bolster props. And again, allow something to release. Your breath, your jaw, a thought. Just about 20 seconds left. Okay, so if your legs were straight, bend your knees. Now, if you have the setup like I do, where you have a bolster or a couple of blankets underneath you, that's what we're going to use. So if you have the 2 blocks, you may want to find a way to get something underneath you in a similar fashion. I'm going to roll to the right. I normally roll to the left, but I think it'll just be easier for you to see. So I'm going to roll to the right, and I'm going to keep my props as they are. So again, if you didn't have something underneath you, I'll also give you another option if this is not working for you. But I have my arm draped between the bolster, or these could be a couple of blankets, and whatever's under my head. My knees are pulling into my chest so that my low back is happy. I could also scissor the legs back if I feel like I wanted to get a little extra out of the legs. And then the top arm is going to reach over to get into the side body. So this is a side body stretch. Now, if you don't have the props, this just isn't comfortable to be on your side. Any side body stretch is fine, but what a nice one can be is banana asana, and it's just how it sounds. I'm just gonna leave my props where they are. So banana asana would be moving your feet to one side, crossing one foot over the other, moving the torso to that same side, and reaching for the elbows. So banana asana is a good alternative if you don't have the right props. So come into that side angle pose, whichever version you chose. I sometimes rhyme. I don't mean to. It just sort of happens. Okay, so we're going to stay with our 3 minutes. And for me, that actually felt really nice to scissor the legs. So I'm going to add that into my pose. Just allow that breath to move into the side body. If you want a little bit more of a stretch, scissoring the legs like I did and letting that top bent knee scissor back, that really gets even deeper into this top outer hip. One of the things I like about yin is when we're in a vinyasa class, sometimes we're looking for these big sort of external movements, sort of these big showy poses or sort of an extreme shape. And in yin, it's so much more subtle. And so the shape itself may not look that extreme, but again, you add that time, you add gravity, you add the breath, and the pose can become much more intense, much more challenging. We're about halfway through. Okay, so move slow. If you're in this setup where you kept the props from the last pose, it's actually quite easy to just roll onto your back. Again, take a moment to pause. We like to rebound. We like to let the body sort of just accept our changes. And then roll to the other side, or take your pose, whatever that was like for you on the other side. Again, we're here 3 minutes. Make whatever changes you did on side 1. Drop your attention inward. Notice if that experience is the same on this side. One of the things you might tap into are your senses. And so the sense of touch might be the first thing. What is your physical body touching? Is it the earth, the props, the clothes? How does it feel? How does the air feel against your skin? Is it hot or cold, wet or dry? Allow your ears to be open. Oftentimes we move away from sound. But see if you can really seek sound out. Hear my voice and how that travels in the eardrums. Notice any other sounds around you. That seems closer or further. Maybe you connect to your sense of smell or even touch. Notice how the breath is traveling across the nasal passages. We've got just about 20 seconds left. All right, so move slow. You can rebound back on your back again as long as that was okay. Take a moment, just sort of accept the changes. And then let's press ourselves up. Now, I'm going to keep this blanket. I'm just going to make it wider. So right now my blanket was just folded in half. I'm going to unfold it one so that when I do it sideways, it's wider than my mat. So I just like this because my knees are eventually going to go wider. Now, I'm going to take my bolster again. Bolsters are optional. You don't need it. But I really like it for the next couple of poses. So option. Some of you will just take your knees wide, sit on your feet, use your bolster like a traditional child's pose. And you might even start that way in the beginning. Now, what I'm eventually going to do for me is I'm going to move that bolster a little forward, let the knees go wider. Now, feet can go together or wide. I'm going to move this bolster more into my belly to support my back. And this child's pose can become more of a frog. So child's pose and or frog. Because I love options, I'm going to give you something at the wall. If your knees are not happy with frog, you can always find yourself at the wall and take like a malasana at the wall to get into the inner thighs. So decide for you, child's pose and or frog or malasana at the wall. Again, just take care of you. We all feel differently today. My toes were broken recently, so I'm just happy that I can finally sit on my feet. So I would have been doing the one at the wall before. Okay, let's stick with our 3 minutes. That's been good to us. And I'll give you halfway through. So if you're in child's pose and halfway through you'd rather be in malasana, then you can do that. Shift myself a little bit forward. I'm going to move into malasana a little early. That was feeling good for me earlier. All right. So you might visualize, you may have heard before, sort of the analogy of the connective tissue that we're looking to target with that of thinking of an orange. So imagine that you've peeled an orange. You can imagine that the outer layer, the skin of the orange is the skin of our body. And as you peel the orange, the backside of the skin, you can sort of see all that rough parts that are on the underside. And that's sort of like the connective tissue that's sort of gluing the skin to the tissue beneath it. And so that's one layer of connective tissue, the myofascial, that we're trying to release. But then as you open up that orange, you might notice that each orange is segmented. It's sort of got that nice white thin layer around it, compartmentalizing each segment of the orange. And we do the same thing with our connective tissue. It compartmentalizes each section of the muscles It goes around the bones, the joints, the organs. And so if we can think about that, and we're about a minute in, so I apologize. I got on a rant and forgot to tell you halfway. So we have a minute left. But if you think of that analogy of the orange and sort of almost this interconnected web, if you feel a tug and a stretch in one part of the body, it's going to start to affect another part of the body. And I think because I didn't give you your halfway point, I will give you guys an extra 30 seconds so you can stay if you want. And so that whole analogy, that whole sort of story was just to have you notice where you experience the tug or the stretch or that pull like you would on a web. But maybe envision or investigate or imagine where else that might be affecting the body. So in a moment, the timer is going to go off, but don't move unless you want to. And I'm going to give us 30 seconds since I didn't give us a proper halfway. And that way, if you're really dropping into your pose, we can stay this extra 30 seconds. If you come out early, you're just lying on your belly. So in a few moments when the timer goes off for that last 30 seconds, if you're at the wall, just slide legs up the wall. Those of you that are in frog, see if you can slowly extend the legs back and just leave the bolster or props under the belly. You might even just rest on it. So find your way onto your belly, whatever that looks like for you. And then I'm going to keep this prop under my belly, just how it is. I'm just trying to find the right time here. I've been cracking up. I don't know about you guys, but like nothing in technology is working lately. So I just sort of laugh when it stops working. Right? Yoga with everything, learning to just accept what is. Okay, so I have the bolster under my belly, and I could stay here sort of in this sphinx, and this could be with or without the prop under the belly. The prop under the belly gives the low back a little bit more support. But what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to lift a little bit up onto the bolster, make sure that I'm comfortable, and I'm going to use this to lift into seal. So it sort of supports my back. It gives me sort of this little ramp. So you're either going to be all the way down in Sphinx on your forearms with or without this prop. I'm going to start our timer. Or you can straighten the arms and move into Sphinx. And if you have low back sensitivities, I would definitely have a blanket or bolster under the belly, and I would be closer to the ground. If your low back is okay, then you can absolutely lift a little bit higher. But just sort of check with you. Each day is a little different. Visualization you might have. This has been my favorite one lately. As I imagine that my breath is a swimmer doing laps in a pool. And so as I feel the breath coming all the way up the spine, as if the spine is the lap, and I get all the way up to the top, there's sort of this natural pause as Our breath, or our little swimmer, turns around. And then the exhale is like the swimmer going back down the spine. When you get to the bottom, there's a natural pause. And you turn around again and feel the breath moving up the spine. And so you can sort of visualize, and that's actually how your craniosacral fluid flows along the spine, although there's sort of waves that it does at the top and at the bottom. But it's a nice visualization to sort of imagine the breath or the fluid traveling up the spine and traveling down. We have less than a minute here. As we hit these last 30 seconds, if you felt like it was extreme or you just want to move a little bit more slowly, you can come down to the forearms so you're not moving very fast. And then you can either lie all the way down just as you are, or maybe you remove the prop and lie all the way down and rebound. Just rest. Close the eyes. Feel the fluid moving through the lower back. Bend your knees if you're able to. And then just windshield wiper your knees a little side to side. If you're on a prop, that may not be available. And just move slow. And then as you straighten the legs, you can slowly press yourself up. Take a moment. I like to move my hips side to side. You might do a down dog or something just to sort of even you out before we move into our next phase. This could be a child's pose again. And then as you come down, I'm going to swing those legs out in front of us. I'm going to use my bolster again. And I'm going to take a wide butterfly again, but this time it's more like a forward fold. So for me, sometimes I like to take the bolster under my knees, my feet on the other side. I kind of round over and I get comfortable with the pose. Now this is a great way to start. What I have found earlier in my practice is that I did that for a short period of time and then I ended up with my feet on top of the bolster or props again, and then I kind of rounded forward that way. So any kind of a wide butterfly forward fold. Now, if you have low back sensitivity from the last pose, feet together, just sit up tall, you can make this more of a butterfly like that. Or you can do legs at the wall, slide down into a butterfly as well. So again, I'm moving into a wide butterfly because I want to target the lower back that we just affected. But if your low back is already affected and you don't want to do that, then take a more traditional butterfly as you know it. All right. Let's stay with our 3 minutes. That's been good to us. And staying with these consistent times, it allows us to sort of observe how we relate to time, or at least relate to the time within each pose. And I say this a lot, but I'm just always fascinated by sort of the passage of time. Why does one pose feel like it was just in a blink of an eye, we're already done? And then other poses, we're just like tapping our fingers, we're waiting. It just feels like, oh, it's dragging on forever. Well, the time, if we can say that's objective, that hasn't changed, right? So what is changing? Sort of how we're relating to it, what we're going through within that scope of time. And we don't have to have the answers. We're just training our mind to investigate. Okay, we're about halfway through this pose. Get creative. I've just sort of stacked my fists on top of my feet to support my head so that I can release my neck. Anytime you put gentle pressure on the forehead, it just trains the body, the nervous system to soften and relax. All right, we've got about 30 seconds left. So slowly round out. We're going to straighten legs. Now, you can take the bolster props under the knees and just take your forward fold this way. If you have low back sensitivities, tight hamstrings, this is just a really nice way to move into the pose. What I'm going to do today is I'm actually going to take the bolster on top of my legs and take the forward fold this way. Now, you can also do just a forward fold, no props. You can do legs up the wall. So any type of a forward fold. Ooh, and one of my favorites as well, you can even do this at the wall. You can also take dangling pose where you're just sort of grabbing onto the elbows and letting gravity take over. So one of those will feel really good in your body. Choose whichever one you like. I'm using the bolster just because I'm going to stay consistent. So we're using the same props. Now we're going to stay consistent with our time. So we're in those 30 minutes. So take whatever version of forward fold works for you. Especially with forward folding. If you have low back disc herniations, if you have sciatic issues, it may not make sense. It doesn't make sense to do the seated forward fold. You might instead take legs up the wall, and then you're not compromising your lower back or those nerves in any way. If you happen to have blocks, you can also set them outside of your legs, and you can relax that way as well. Again, just explore. If I talk a little less now, maybe allow that time to draw you inward. We're halfway through our pose. 30 more seconds. So slowly back out. Take a moment just to, again, feel the effects of the pose. And then we're going to lie on our back and use our bolster, whatever you'd like, whatever is available for you. So I'm going to use the bolster. I'm going to come to my back. This could be a block or blankets, whatever you've got available. And then lift your hips and slide your prop underneath your pelvis. Take your feet to the ceiling and just enjoy a nice, gentle inversion. Okay. We are going to be here 3 minutes. 3 minutes might feel like a long time for you. So if you like start going to sleep or you have any reason you don't want this much pressure towards the eyes or the face, then this can always be a supported bridge, or you can always sit with your feet on the floor, knees falling into one another. So again, just do what you need. So as we age, and aging is really sort of in the body scope, anything after 25, you start to dehydrate a little bit. And so what we're looking to do in a lot of these poses is we push, we pull, we gently shear in healthy ways and healthy stresses to vacuum, to pull moisture into the tissues. We sort of, that's how we get moisture. So after about 25, we have to do it more purposefully. And so our twists and our push and our pulls, we hydrate all the discs of the spine, the internal organs. We're looking to create that space in the tissue so fluid can go through. And that's part of that warmth and circulation and movement and euphoric feeling you feel through your practice. About halfway through, so if 90 more seconds is okay for you here, then stay as you are. Last 20 seconds. All right. Just slowly bend your knees for a moment. Set your feet onto the floor. Now, I absolutely love this last pose with the bolster or prop underneath, but you can kind of just decide and see what's feeling right for you. So I'm just adjusting and making sure that prop is comfortable underneath. I'm going to cross my right ankle over the left knee. Now, a few options as always. I love options, as you know. So you could just stay here and let the hip open in that way. But what I'm going to do after I cross the right ankle over the left knee is I'm going to let that left leg come in like it's thread the needle. Now, normally in thread the needle, you'd hold the leg. But what I like about being on this prop is I don't have to worry about the arms. And as the left leg comes in, gravity does the work for me because my hips are a little bit lifted. So you decide. You could also do this with no prop underneath you. You could take the left foot at the wall and be flat on the floor. So whatever version, and if thread the needle is just not where you want to be, you can take pigeon or sleeping swan or any other hip opener is fine. But this will be our last posture. And stay with those 3 minutes. So your thread the needle or equivalent posture. And actually, since I don't need my hands, I'm going to take my arms into cactus and add that little extra sort of opening in the upper back. The left leg can also straighten and use that as gravity as well. Gravity is good. Gravity, sort of this downward pull on the body. You sort of think about atmospheric pressure. It helps us breathe. It builds our bones. It keeps us strong. And when we think about it in this capacity with our yin postures, it reminds us to melt, to release, to surrender. It's a practice of allowing, of acceptance. You're almost halfway through this posture. For me, I'm straightening that left leg just to sort of give the knee a little rest, add a little bit of circulation. A little less than 30 seconds. I'm going to drop my left foot to the floor and just sort of moving out slowly. This is sort of back to that beginning phase. Slowly unwind. Maybe you come back to this beginning phase as well, or set both feet down. And let's finish by crossing left ankle over right knee. You can stay as you are. I already felt a really nice, good hip stretch as I opened up that left hip. Or at any time the leg comes in. About halfway through this pose. Oh, 45 seconds left. If you're like me, the last 30 seconds or so, 20, 30 seconds, I set the foot down. So I'm going to do that here so don't forget. And sort of dropping in the last 30 seconds. And honestly, for me, even though this is sort of, quote, the more simple version of this, this feels a little bit more deep for me. Oh, that's nice. The timer didn't go off. Okay, I was thinking that was taking a while. So go ahead and lift your hips up. Go ahead and slide your hips down. Slide that bolster under your pelvis. Now I'm going just a couple minutes over. If you really need to be somewhere, I want to give you that option. I'll set the timer. Somehow I turned the sound off, so I apologize. We're just going to do 2.5 minutes, so not long, but it will be just a little over if you were here just for the straight hour. So the timer is going. If you need any final movements like a little twist or happy baby, take it. The bolster prop can go under the knees. If you have those extra blankets, you might put those over the hips for some weight and padding. The timer is going, the sound is on, so if you have the time, feel free to just settle in for this final posture. Start to move fingers and toes. Maybe yawn as you reach overhead. Bend the knees, make your way to your right. And then with eyes closed or partially closed, press yourself upright to seated. Hands to your heart in gratitude. Lift your heart. Bow your head. Namaste.